Hello, I'm Kathleen Snyder, and welcome to Backstage Antiques. This evening we are going to be discussing antique clocks from the late 18th century to modern. We also brought a beautiful example of antique pocket watches. Joining me tonight is our guest, Ralph Ferroni. Ralph, I'm not going to ask you about the history of time because you've brought so many beautiful clocks with me that I think we'll get right into the clock segment.
Fine.
What can you tell me about this one, Ralph?
Well, this is a nice example of a clock from the late 18th century. It's from around 1790. It has a broken arch style top. It's made of mahogany. And it has a fusee driven movement for the people with a technical interest. If maybe we can show the audience the beautiful engraving on the back plate. They did an extreme amount of workmanship on these clocks. Also, you can see the pierced fish scale side grills. It's another characteristic of this style clock. They're quite desirable. You don't see that many in this country, but they can be found. So.
This is just beautiful.
This is a Regency style clock, again English. It's a fusee drive movement driven through a chain. You can see the beautiful engine work, engine turning on the dial. Beautiful casting, chased.
This is all bronze, isn't it?
Right. This is well, ormolu actually. It's a gilded bronze material, and you can see the beautiful chased and engraved work. These are very desirable. This is approximately from around 1815. It was made by the firm Grimaldi and Johnson. They were on Strand in London, which was one of the prominent streets for clockmakers.
Is this an 8-day clock or a 30?
This is an 8-day clock. It doesn't chime, but it's no regard. It's still a very desirable clock.
Well, it's very, very nice
because of the
size.
high-grade castings and fittings on it.
The Chinese one, you want?
Here, let's take this one.
This is a honey.
Yeah, this is a little more austere. These are very attractive clocks. They come in with the round dial or the square dial. Again, it's another fusee-driven clock. It's English manufacturer. It was made by James Hucks, who could be found in Piccadilly in England, in London. And
this is about 1830.
yes, this would come from around 1830, 1840. It has a silver dial, the sculpted cast brass bezel, and it's a very finely made clock. It's another clock that doesn't strike, but it's a very desirable clock. It's because they're very attractive, and it's a high quality regulator. It would be considered a nice clock, nice addition to any collection.
It's really well engineered, Ralph. Okay. You want to take the little...
Let's take the skeleton clock. That's another. Normally this clock is displayed with a glass dome over it. Again, these have really become popular in the last few years. This is another fusee drive. Maybe we can get a closer view of the drive mechanism. A fusee being this cone-shaped piece in the mechanism, it was the answer to the non-linearity of the spring. The clock wouldn't drive with a constant force for the 8 days, so by having this cone pulley in there, it would compensate for that non-linearity, and it would maintain the power constant over the 8-day run of the clock.
And what would this be, Ralph? It just looks like a wire that you'd see. This is just something to hold it
that's just a spring, a return spring to give our bell a little chime, return the hammer. And
how old would this clock be?
This clock, a lot of these clocks were made by apprentices. They were used to demonstrate their skill and to show it off. And there's quite a few of them around. A lot of them. This is probably one of the more common styles. But to find the domes intact on the clock, that's a big plus for this type of clock. We didn't bring the dome tonight because of
it was awfully cold, and
yeah, it's cold. They could break just from the temperature changes.
But we have to keep this covered because the dust would interfere with.
Exactly.
Okay. I love this one.
Yes, this is Chinese. These are very, very rare, but we can get the hopes up for the clock collectors with China opening up a little bit. More and more of these are coming into the country. They were given as wedding gifts, the way I understand it. They were copied from the English clocks, the movements, but the case styles are strictly Chinese. Most of them come from around the 1840s to 1850s.
I'll show the back.
Yeah. They're beautifully made with sliding panels. They assemble very nicely, disassemble very nicely. They're on maybe you can hold a table and I'll lift the clock off the table, and you can see how the top panel rotates on the table if you give it a little spin.
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. The whole thing, yeah, it is an engineering.
Yeah, they
clever,
like
these
a
Chinese.
Chinese puzzle.
Yeah, look at the...
And you can see the engraving on the movement.
Maybe we can-
Most of them, they have Chinese signatures. Quite often they're gibberish. They're just done to look like an English signature, but they had no knowledge of English, and they would just make some scrawls that would hopefully be interpreted as English.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, here's a
This is very nice.
French Empire 4-column clock. It has beautiful capitals or chased and engraved capitals and bases on these columns. This was also a clock that was commonly made in around, they made them from around 1840 up through 1880s.
Mm-hmm.
But this one still has pretty nice gilt work, and the pendulum is very nicely made. And has a count wheel strike, which means that it's not self-correcting as in a rack, the more common rack and snail type of strike mechanism that you see on modern clocks.
This looks like it was all handmade.
Yes, it was. All these clocks were handmade from start to finish.
Oh, boy.
Sometimes multiple people would have their hands in them because there are a lot of cottage industries supplying the markets, supplying the manufacturers, makers.
Get these cute little babies up here now.
These are traveling clocks, balance wheel clocks. They're called carriage clocks or traveling clocks. This one is interesting because it's heavily engraved and chased. It has a striking mechanism. I'm not sure if, there it goes.
Oh.
You can hear it. Mm-hmm. But they're portable. They have a balance wheel like a watch, and you can move them about, and they were taken along on trips. And the reason they had the repeat mechanism was that during the night they didn't have the lighting they have today, and they would just reach over at night and hit the button on the top of the clock, and it would strike, and they'd have an indication of time. Depending on the type of clock, they could tell within 1 hour or a quarter hour what time it was.
Just
That
beautiful.
clock being 1 hour. This clock
All
would
beveled.
tell you within a quarter hour what time it was. And this is a lovely clock. This is has Corinthian columns, has a multicolored dial. Again, it's portable. It's all original.
Comes in a sweet little box, all
Right, and-
velvet
and-
lined.
And by, I don't know what happened to the box, but that would have been interesting to show. But this clock will strike the quarters, so you could tell within a quarter hour what time it is by counting the chimes.
Counting the chimes.
It also has an alarm mechanism.
I think we'll finish this particular segment with this last clock, Ralph.
Okay, this is another quarter
Carriage.
repeater, more typical case style. It also has its own leatherette case, velvet lined, and it has the original key in that. And this is just a nice, clean clock. Everything's there, all original key, original case. It makes it nice.
And these are 8 days, too, aren't they?
All of these are 8-day
All these are 8
clocks.
days.
Yes.
I think we're going to stop for a break now. We will come back right after this with more antique clocks and a segment on pocket watches. Welcome back. We're discussing antique clocks and pocket watches with Ralph Ferrone. Ralph, I think we'll finish up the antique clocks that we have here with us, and then we'll go into the pocket watches.
Okay. Here we have a nice piece of Americana, very, very important in American history. Eli Terry designed this clock. It was designed to use a wooden works made entirely of wood, just a few metal pieces in it. And it was the first time they really did any mass production type work, and they utilized the rivers and mills, and it really was an important part of American industry. It was really the first toehold into mass production. But anyhow, this clock is by Seth Thomas under Eli Terry's patent. It's about this contemporary with Eli Terry's clocks.
See the pulleys up here.
Right, and in fact, if I turn the clock around, you can see the wooden plate in the rear. This would be the rear plate of the movement, and you can see the pivot holes. Normally, there's a zinc plate over that covers it and keeps the dust out, but you can see the movement itself is...
How old is this clock,
This
Ralph?
clock is probably from around 1825. And it has a nice paper in it that indicates that Thomas made it, Plymouth Hollow, Connecticut. And very desirable American clock.
Beautiful. 1820.
This is another desirable American clock. It's made by Alicia Manrose. It's called a steeple on steeple. It has fusee drive. It's a little different than the English fusee drive, but same principle. But it's just in a real nice condition, real desirable clock. I think a lot of people that are interested in antiques have probably seen this, just a standard steeple. This is called a steeple on steeple.
Yeah, I've never seen one like this.
And
Beautiful.
you can see the nice paper inside, and the
yeah.
reverse painting, decorative painting on the glasses. Here you can see the fusee drive, which is a rarity. It's not common to see that in this style clock.
This is wonderful.
Okay.
I'll get this one.
Okay, we can continue with the...
Well, you want to use the chronometer?
Yeah, we'll pull the chronometer up. Okay, this is a ship's chronometer. The design of these things stayed the same from about the inception. Harrison invented it back in the 1700s. He won a 20,000-pound prize for being able to devise a timekeeping device that could be carried aboard a ship and keep time within a certain period. And this enabled them to find longitude. That's why the British ruled the seas for, probably a century there, because of their ability to make precision chronometers. And these clocks are, again, very highly prized. And there aren't really that many around when you figure...
It's like a puzzle box.
Right. Normally this was kept locked. And the top cover would be opened, okay? And
Oh yeah, this
this would be locked, and only one person on the ship would have the winding chores, and they would wind the clock, and they would never disturb. They would never disturb the clock. In fact, they didn't even set the clock. They would never set the hands on the clock. They would know if it lost 2 seconds a day. They would just keep a log, and they would calculate 2 seconds a day and adjust for that in their logs.
Oh, for heaven's sake! This is a beautiful, beautiful piece. How old is this, Ralph?
This clock is not that old. It's probably from the 1920s or so. But it's interesting that the same design. In fact, they stayed virtually unchanged from around the 1820s all the way up to Second World War. Hamilton got into the act, making them for the war effort, and they probably devised probably the finest piece of mechanical equipment ever made.
Okay,
They were able to mass produce the chronometer, which was very interesting. Nobody else was able to do that before then. This is a very nice clock. It's French. It's probably from around 1850. It has a tortoise shell case called Bull, and just a real nice clock. It's time only, and it's a miniature clock. It's considered a miniature clock, and those are always
like for a
prized.
boudoir or little.
Sure.
Yeah, that's.
Sure.
The color of this is just
It's
wonderful.
also doesn't have a pendulum. It has a balance wheel like a watch.
Oh, beautiful little face.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's another traveling clock. It's quite rare. It has what they call a two-plane escapement for the technical clock folks out there. You can see the chain drive. It's driven by a chain through a fusee, another fusee-driven clock. It has a glass side housing. It's in a drum, glass drum. And this is, yeah, I prize this clock highly. I think it's a real nice clock.
It is very, very nice. Very heavy also. Our last clock is our happy clock.
This is it's one I'm trying to acquire. We know who this belongs to. This is made by Tiffany Studios. It was marketed by Tiffany Studios. It's a French clock, but it's probably more prized as an art object than as a clock. It's got beautiful slag glass paneling, and it's the pierced bronze top and sides, and it's just a real nice clock. It's again, it would be prized to a number of folks besides clock collectors.
We'll just flip open the back.
Yeah, you can see the...
Ralph did the restoration on this clock, about 3 years ago, and it's still as clean as a whistle, and it keeps perfect time. And it's an 8-day clock, and it strikes on the hour and a half. Okay. Now I think we got some people that would be interested in our pocket watches, Ralph, so I'm going to put a few of them up here and hold them. And
well, this first watch is a real nice watch. It's from around 1775, and you can see the enameling around the outside of the case, and it's also 2 rows of semi-precious stones. The backside has a repoussé fitted center, and again, the enameling is carried out in the back also with the double row of stones. And there's even stones set in the hands. I don't know if they can get a nice shot of that or not.
this is really wonderful.
How does that come out on the camera?
It's just a beautiful, beautiful clock. Okay, Ralph, I'm going to hand you this one.
This is a repeater, and its claim is that, again, you're able to tell the time without even in the dark, because if you push the button, lo and behold, that struck off 4 hours, and then the double bells are the quarters, and it would indicate 3/4 or some period 3/4 to the hour. You'd have the 3 double chimes. So, oops, I
Whoopsie.
struck it again. This is a very early watch, and the nice thing about it is the workmanship on the back. You can see it's pierced and engraved, and it's this was made by Martin Senior, and it hails from, I would guess, 1725. And it has nice pillars. You can see the pillars. Very decorative. It has a front winding movement, which is unusual for English.
Martin Senior.
This is a chronograph as well as a watch, 14-karat case. It's made by Waltham. It's an American watch.
Got to keep this flat a little bit. American.
And yes, it's an American watch in a 14-karat case, which would be nice, but it's also a chronograph, which would be like a stopwatch. So by pushing it, we don't have the watch wound, but by pushing the stem, that would allow this second hand to travel.
Oh, here's a nice, you can read this from 50 feet.
Right, this is a railroad watch, and the nice feature about this, it has an up-down indicator, which would tell you how much time is remaining on the winding of the watch, so you could keep there's no chance of letting the watch run down, which was important for the railroad watches because scheduling was done, and nobody wanted to have any accidents with the train, so it was very important. That's when the watch industry took off, when they tried to accommodate the railroads with fine watches that would be consistent with keeping railroad time.
I think we'll show this one right now for the ladies, that we did bring one ladies' watch. This is 18-karat gold. It's tri-colored. The back, this is the front, which you could put an initial in if you desired, and this is the back, and it has diamonds in it. It's from around 1897. It's an Elgin with a nice enamel face, and it's sitting, ladies would wear this and they would adjust the slide. The slide is a pink sapphire, which is unusual, and the chain is 18-karat gold. And the ladies would just use this and enjoy it, and I love it. I enjoy it. I don't wear
Yeah,
it that often, but it's
a
quite
beautiful
nice.
watch.
This is a man's hunting case watch.
This is called a doctor's watch. It's a 4th model Elgin. It has a center sweep second, which is unusual for American watches. And it's very collectible. It's a solid gold case, box hinged case. That would be this here strong. You can see the strong hinge built up on there.
Well, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so we'll end this segment with just showing you a few of the watches that we have brought this evening. Welcome back. We're going to end this particular program with some modern day clocks. Ralph brought me this beautiful little clock with his 2 little daughters in there, Stacy and Sarah. This, Ralph, this is from Germany?
Yes, this was made in Germany. I suspect about 1930. We're into the 20th century clocks now. And it's got a very high-grade movement. It has a fully jeweled escapement like a watch. And it's not the normal torsion type suspension system that you would normally find in an anniversary clock. It's sort of an interesting clock with the oval dome and the porcelain figures. I really, as soon as I saw this, I lit up and thought I had to have it.
Oh, it's right. You want to get our little free
familiar
swinger?
Story.
Yeah, we have to have all these clocks.
You could probably tell me more about this clock than I can. It's a mystery clock. It's supposed to be a mystery on how does the clock keep swinging, and I'll keep it that way. It has an Art Deco figure, right?
Oh, yes.
That's case strength.
Yeah, very, she's like a Nubian slave, but she's deco and flare. And this is like an 8-day clock, and she just swings for 8 days, and she's signed. It's a very nice piece. These were popular from about 1890 to about 1930. And they came with different type figures, gentlemen, children, a little boy with a tennis racket or a racquetball racket, and elephants, animals, and everybody loves them because they just, of all ages, people just enjoy them. I think I'm going to take this one home with me, Ralph.
The maker on that was Youngins.
Youngins?
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is a nice novelty clock. It's not really a novelty clock, but it was this was called a gaslight clock, and it has a translucent dial, and they would set it on the gas fixture at night, and the flame behind the dial would it would enable them to see the time at night. And these are desirable. Generally, the dials are cracked. They were made of translucent glass and quite fragile. But this one survived so far.
I'll be very careful.
Okay. There's a strong interest in battery clocks lately, and this clock is from around 1930. It was made by Bar Manufacturing in New York, and it's it's battery operated, and it's a pretty clock, nice displayable clock.
Is this a level? Has its own
Yes, it has a
built-in level?
Right, it has a level, and it's.
I wish mine had it.
It has a mechanism called a hip toggler that tells it when to impulse it to give it another little oomph to the pendulum.
Charging?
Yeah. So it's very displayable, though. With
Again,
all the
this
brass
has to
and,
be kept under a dome to keep all the dust.
right, you'd
Not
want to
only
keep
is
it out
it
of the
functional,
dust.
it's
Sure,
just it
sure.
adds to the
But
importance
it was a
of the
show-off.
piece.
The electrical clocks, the manufacturers wanted to show off their product.
You get that sweet little one with the bell?
Okay. This is a reproduction of a lantern clock from the 1700s. This is more 1940-ish, made by Smith in England, but it's just an attractive clock. It's bright and it keeps time. It's an 8-day clock, and it's just an attractive clock.
Ralph, while you pick up our last clock, can you tell us something about maintenance or cleaning, or should clocks be wound a couple of times or a week, or if it's an 8-day?
Well, normally, most clocks are 8-day clocks. There's a few clocks around that are 30-hour clocks, such as this wooden works clock back here. Some of the earlier American clocks, because of I hate to say cheapness, but they were trying to compete with the English and trying to get clocks out to the market. There's a big market out there, and they couldn't make the clocks fast enough, so they made a low-cost clock, and they typically ran for 30 hours. Maintenance, I would say that my feeling is that the oil should be refreshed at least every 2 years, and probably, if it was a quality clock, probably cleaned every 5 to 7 years. Probably the average is probably 10 years for a clock cleaning, but really that's probably too long of a duration. This clock, if I could speak on it, this clock runs off of temperature changes, which is sort of a novelty.
Oh, my.
And they're brought in from Switzerland, and it's made by LaGrange, and it's they're expensive.
Yeah, good.
and you could buy them today at Marshall Field's or any of the high-quality jewelers.
Yeah, I've had a couple of LaGranges, and it's a joy to look at them, the way they
They're beautifully made.
put
and,
everything
it's
together.
probably one of the more precision clocks made today, mass
Yes,
production
beautiful.
clock.
Well, the clock certainly had its chance with the temperature changes, the way it was out and in.
Oh, it's interesting.
bring 'em
A
here
two-
this evening.
Yeah, a 2-degree
Thank you.
temperature change will wind it for 48 hours running.
Thank you. We brought a couple of books to show this evening, Ralph, as we end our program. This is in Volume 1 and Volume 2, and these particular books will show you all the different clocks that were made in our country, probably from the late 1800s in through the 1930s. They have wall clocks. We didn't bring any wall clocks tonight, but we certainly have a nice array of them. We have some gingerbread kitchen clocks and everything. And Ralph, I want to thank you so much for bringing your collection this evening and part of my collection. And we enjoyed the program. It was most informative.
I was delighted to come.
And I'm very, very happy. And thank you so much to your family, too.